I'm Maggie McGrath, senior editor at Forbes, and today we are joined by Gregory Brew. He is an analyst with the Eurasia group, and he covers energy and Iran, and we will be talking about both of these things today. Greg, thanks so much for joining us. It's a busy news day.
Thanks so much for having me on. It is indeed.
So we are talking because overnight or earlier today, depending on your time zone, the Israeli military appeared to have struck Iran, and it's the latest in a string of volley attacks between these two countries. Iran fired missiles at Israel last weekend, which had been an apparent retaliation for Israel's attack on the Iranian embassy in Syria on April 1st. Can you just break down what are we seeing right now?
Well, you're absolutely right. This latest attack, Israel's attack on Iran that happened about 12 hours ago, early morning hours in Iran, late night last night here in the U.S., was the latest in a back and forth that really did get started on April 1st when Israel struck Iran's consulate in Damascus. This was perceived by the Iranians as a major provocation, and they responded in unprecedented fashion by launching a barrage of missiles and drones at Israel last weekend. Now, the key is whether Israel's attack on Iran this morning constitutes escalation. Is this going to get worse? And by all appearances, both Israel and Iran have concluded their back and forth. The Israeli attack on Iran was small. It was largely symbolic. It did not cause significant damage. The Israelis did strike Iranian territory, but the Iranians are sort of brushing it off. The official position of the Iranian government is that missiles were not fired into Iran, that there was a small incident involving drones in the city of Esfahan, which security forces dealt with. The Iranians are downplaying what happened. They don't seem interested in treating it as an escalation, probably due to the fact that they're not interested in escalation right now. They don't want to feel compelled to respond. So I think we can confidently call this latest chapter closed, but it does suggest that things could get very, very bad between Iran and Israel should things escalate or another crisis break out in the future.
I was going to ask because all the reports coming out of Iran seemed to read as if they are downplaying it. And a lot of the news reports coming out are using phrases like de-escalation. And yet it is nonetheless an attack. So can you explain, is it just for show? Is it posturing? Like why even attack?
Well, it's a delicate dance that Iran and Israel are currently engaged in. And it's really a dance that goes back years. You know, it needs to be pointed out that Iran and Israel have been competing against one another for decades, fighting a so-called shadow war that has mostly been playing out, again, in the shadows, in covert operations, in the battlegrounds, in Syria and elsewhere in the region. But what we've seen over the last 2 weeks is an escalation. They have dragged their shadow war out of the shadows. Iran and Israel are now shooting directly at one another. Now, they're doing it in sort of a symbolic way. These kinds of attacks are designed to restore deterrence. They're designed to signal capability. Really, Iran and Israel are trying to tell each other, back off, or things could get much worse. And right now, those messages do seem to be getting through. Both the Iranians and the Israelis have signaled that they don't want to escalate. I should note that there is a lot of pressure coming down on Israel from the United States not to escalate this crisis, to try to reduce tensions, to bring the temperatures down a little bit. The Iranians don't really want to escalate. They've been trying to avoid escalation really for the last 6 months in the context of the regional crisis. So while we are seeing a reduction in temperatures, things are coming down a little bit. Tensions between Israel and Iran are still very, very high, and they're likely to remain high for the foreseeable future.